We're all going to Hawaii. Except you, Christina. Dad said I'd stay to watch the kids. Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching. I was setting the table for Sunday dinner when Dad dropped the bomb that would change everything. The good china was already out, the roast was in the oven, and I had spent the entire morning making sure everything was perfect, just like I always did. Kids, I've got some exciting news, Dad announced, his voice booming across the dining room as my brothers Mike and Steven walked in with their wives. I've been planning something special for months. I looked up from folding the napkins, genuinely curious. Dad rarely planned surprises anymore. At 72, his idea of excitement was usually a new fishing rod or complaining about the neighbor's dog. We're all going to Hawaii, he said, spreading his arms wide like he was announcing the lottery results. 2 weeks in Maui, all expenses paid. I've already booked the resort. The room erupted. Steven's wife, Linda, actually squealed, and Mike immediately started talking about surfing lessons. I felt my heart jump. Hawaii. I dreamed about Hawaii since I was 12 when Mrs. Peterson showed us pictures of the volcanic beaches in geography class. When do we leave? I asked, setting down the last napkin. That's when the conversation stopped. Dad looked at me with that expression I knew too well, the one that said I had missed something obvious. Well, Ashley, he said slowly, we're all going. Except you, of course. The words hit me like cold water. What do you mean, except me? Linda let out a little laugh, the kind that wasn't really funny. Someone has to stay with the kids, Ashley. You know that. I looked around the room. Mike and Linda's twin boys, ages 8 and 10. Steven and his wife Sarah's daughter Emma, who was 6. They were all staring at me expectantly, like this was the most natural thing in the world. But I could come too, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. We could hire a babysitter, or maybe the kids could come with us. Don't be ridiculous, Steven interrupted, not even looking up from his phone. Do you know how expensive it would be to bring 3 kids to Hawaii? Besides, they'd be bored. And you're so good with them, Sarah added with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. They love spending time with Aunt Ashley. I felt something crack inside my chest. 32 years old, and I was still the automatic babysitter. The reliable one. The one who didn't have a real life to interrupt. I've never been to Hawaii, I said quietly. Dad waved his hand dismissively. You'll get your chance someday, sweetheart. This is a family trip. Family trip. I was family, wasn't I? I'd been taking care of this family for years. When Mom died 5 years ago, who stayed with Dad for 3 months to make sure he ate properly. When Mike got divorced, who watched his kids every weekend for a year. When Steven's wife had her nervous breakdown, who dropped everything to help with Emma.
Me.
Always me. I already put the deposit down, Dad continued, pulling out a brochure. Ocean view suites, luau dinners, snorkeling tours. It's going to be incredible. They spent the next hour planning activities, talking about restaurants, discussing what to pack. I served dinner, cleared the plates, and listened to them get more and more excited about their trip. My trip. The trip I wasn't invited to. As everyone was leaving, Linda pulled me aside in the kitchen. Thanks for understanding, Ashley, she said, loading leftover roast into a container. I know it's a lot to ask, but honestly, you're the only one we trust with the kids. And it's not like you have anything else going on, right? I stared at her, wondering when exactly I had become the family's unpaid nanny. When had my life become so small that everyone assumed I had nothing better to do? After they all left, I sat alone in Dad's kitchen, staring at the Hawaii brochure they'd forgotten on the counter. The beaches looked like paradise. The water was so blue it didn't look real. I picked up my phone and Googled flights to Hawaii. Round trip from our city, $1,200. I had that much in my savings account. I had enough vacation days from my job at the insurance office. There was absolutely nothing stopping me from booking my own trip. Except I knew I wouldn't. Because in 2 weeks, I'd be here, making sure Mike's boys did their homework and Emma ate her vegetables. I'd be ordering pizza and helping with math problems and breaking up fights over video games. Just like I always did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Linda's words. It's not like you have anything else going on, right? The casual cruelty of it sat in my stomach like a stone. I got up and made tea, then found myself pulling out old photo albums from the hall closet. Page after page of family memories, and in every single one, there I was, always helping, always in the background, always the responsible one. Here was Christmas 2018, everyone opening presents while I'm in the kitchen cooking breakfast. Easter 2019, everyone posing for pictures while I'm chasing Emma, who had chocolate on her dress. Mike's wedding photos from 2015, I'm holding baby Emma while everyone else dances. When had I become invisible in my own life? The memories came flooding back. I was supposed to start college at 18 just like my brothers. I had been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship. I was going to study education, maybe become a teacher. But then Dad had his first heart attack, and Mom needed help with the house, and someone had to stay. Just for a year, Mom had said, until your father's back on his feet. That was 14 years ago. When Mike got married, I was 24 and finally ready to go back to school. I had saved enough money, filled out all the applications. Then Linda got pregnant with twins, and suddenly I was needed again. Just until we get into a routine, Mike had begged. You're so good with babies, Ashley. We don't trust anyone else. I stayed. When Stephen met Sarah, I was 28 and had started taking night classes. I was halfway through my degree, working full-time during the day and studying until midnight. Then Sarah got pregnant, and it was a difficult pregnancy. She was on bed rest for 4 months. Just until the baby comes, Stephen had asked. Please, Ashley. You're the only one Mom trusted with kids. I dropped out again. After Mom's funeral, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe without her constantly needing help, I could finally focus on my own life. I was 31, but that wasn't too old to start over, right?
Wrong.
Dad fell apart completely. He couldn't cook, couldn't manage his medications, couldn't handle being alone. The house was falling apart. Mike and Stephen were too busy with their families to help. You're so good at this stuff, Stephen had said. Besides, you live the closest. So I stayed. I cooked Dad's meals, managed his doctor appointments, paid his bills. I watched my 20s disappear, then watched my early 30s follow right behind. And what did I have to show for it? A job I took because it was flexible enough to handle family emergencies. An apartment I could barely afford because I was always lending money to family members. No college degree. No husband. No kids of my own. No life. I closed the photo album and walked to my purse, pulling out my phone. For some reason, I found myself scrolling through Facebook looking at old classmates from high school. Jennifer was a nurse in Portland now, married with 2 kids. Marcus owned a restaurant in Seattle. Even Quiet Beth Morrison was a graphic designer in Chicago, posting pictures from art galleries and wine tastings. They all looked so happy, so accomplished, so grown up. What was I? The family babysitter, the backup plan, the one who stayed behind. I set the phone down and walked to my bathroom mirror. When had I gotten so tired looking? When had those lines appeared around my eyes? When had I started looking like someone who had given up? My phone buzzed with a text from Stephen. Can you pick up Emma from school tomorrow? Sarah has a dentist appointment. I stared at the message for a long time. Tomorrow was Tuesday. I had taken off work early 3 times this month already for family favors. My boss, Mrs. Chen, had started making comments about my reliability issues. But what choice did I have? I was the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who couldn't say no. I typed back, of course. Then I turned off the light and went to bed, wondering if this was all my life would ever be. Wondering if somewhere along the way I had stopped being a person and become just a function. The family's personal assistant. The one who made everyone else's life easier. As I lay there in the dark, I could hear my neighbors upstairs laughing about something. They were a young couple probably my age, and they seemed to have so much fun together. They traveled, they had friends over, they lived their lives. When was the last time I had laughed like that? When was the last time I had done something just because I wanted to? I couldn't remember. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Linda's words. It's not like you have anything else going on, right? The casual cruelty of it sat in my stomach like a stone. I got up and made tea, then found myself pulling out old photo albums from the hall closet. Page after page of family memories, and in every single one, there I was, always helping, always in the background, always the responsible one. Here is Christmas 2018, everyone opening presents while I'm in the kitchen cooking breakfast. Easter 2019, everyone posing for pictures while I'm chasing Emma, who had chocolate on her dress. Mike's wedding photos from 2015, I'm holding baby Emma while everyone else dances. When had I become invisible in my own life? The memories came flooding back. I was supposed to start college at 18, just like my brothers. I had been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship. I was going to study education, maybe become a teacher. But then Dad had his first heart attack, and Mom needed help with the house, and someone had to stay. Just for a year, Mom had said. Until your father's back on his feet. That was 14 years ago. When Mike got married, I was 24 and finally ready to go back to school. I had saved enough money, filled out all the applications. Then Linda got pregnant with twins, and suddenly I was needed again. Just until we get into a routine, Mike had begged. You're so good with babies, Ashley. We don't trust anyone else. I stayed. When Stephen met Sarah, I was 28 and had started taking night classes. I was halfway through my degree, working full-time during the day and studying until midnight. Then Sarah got pregnant, and it was a difficult pregnancy. She was on bed rest for 4 months. Just until the baby comes, Stephen had asked.
Please, Ashley.
You're the only one Mom trusted with kids. I dropped out again. After Mom's funeral, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe without her constantly needing help, I could finally focus on my own life. I was 31, but that wasn't too old to start over, right?
Wrong.
Dad fell apart completely. He couldn't cook, couldn't manage his medications, couldn't handle being alone. The house was falling apart. Mike and Stephen were too busy with their families to help. You're so good at this stuff, Stephen had said. Besides, you live the closest. So I stayed. I cooked Dad's meals, managed his doctor appointments, paid his bills. I watched my 20s disappear, then watched my early 30s follow right behind. And what did I have to show for it? A job I took because it was flexible enough to handle family emergencies. An apartment I could barely afford because I was always lending money to family members. No college degree. No husband. No kids of my own. No life. I closed the photo album and walked to my purse, pulling out my phone. For some reason, I found myself scrolling through Facebook looking at old classmates from high school. Jennifer was a nurse in Portland now, married with 2 kids. Marcus owned a restaurant in Seattle. Even Quiet Beth Morrison was a graphic designer in Chicago, posting pictures from art galleries and wine tastings. They all looked so happy.
So accomplished.
So grown up.
What was I?
The family babysitter. The backup plan. The one who stayed behind. I set the phone down and walked to my bathroom mirror. When had I gotten so tired looking? When had those lines appeared around my eyes? When had I started looking like someone who had given up? My phone buzzed with a text from Stephen. Can you pick up Emma from school tomorrow? Sarah has a dentist appointment. I stared at the message for a long time.
Tomorrow was Tuesday.
I had taken off work early 3 times this month already for family favors. My boss, Mrs. Chen, had started making comments about my reliability issues. But what choice did I have? I was the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who couldn't say no. I typed back, of course. Then I turned off the light and went to bed, wondering if this was all my life would ever be. Wondering if somewhere along the way, I had stopped being a person and become just a function. The family's personal assistant. The one who made everyone else's life easier. As I lay there in the dark, I could hear my neighbors upstairs laughing about something. They were a young couple, probably my age, and they seemed to have so much fun together. They traveled, they had friends over, they lived their lives. When was the last time I had laughed like that? When was the last time I had done something just because I wanted to? I couldn't remember. 3 days after they left for Hawaii, I was at Dad's house doing what I always did, cleaning up after everyone else. The breakfast dishes were still in the sink from their early morning flight, and there were suitcase tags scattered across the living room floor. I was in Dad's office, organizing his desk like I did every month, when I knocked over a stack of papers. As I bent to pick them up, one document caught my eye. It was from Grandma Rose's estate attorney, dated 10 years ago. My hands started shaking as I read the letterhead. Final distribution of assets, Rose Elizabeth Morrison estate. Grandma Rose had died when I was 22. I remembered the funeral, remembered Dad telling us there wasn't much money left after her medical bills. Just enough to cover the funeral expenses, he had said. But this document told a different story. Distribution to Ashley Marie Morrison, $247,000 from life insurance policy and savings account, as per deceased's specific instructions. The paper slipped from my fingers. $247,000.
To me.
Specifically to me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I scrambled through the rest of the papers, finding more documents, more evidence. Bank statements showing the money had been deposited into an account with Dad's name on it. Real estate documents showing he had used part of it as a down payment on Stephen's house. Investment records showing another chunk had paid for Mike's divorce lawyer. There were receipts. Lots of receipts. The family vacation to Yellowstone in 2016 that I couldn't afford to join, paid for with my inheritance. Linda's breast augmentation surgery, my money. Stephen's brand new truck, my money. Dad's kitchen renovation, my money. I sat on the floor of his office, surrounded by evidence of the biggest betrayal of my life, and I felt something inside me break open. Not break apart, break open. Like something that had been sealed shut for years was finally cracking wide. My inheritance. The money Grandma Rose had left specifically for me, probably knowing I would need it someday. Money that could have paid for college, for my own place, for a real life. Money that had been stolen from me by my own family. I picked up my phone with trembling hands and called the estate attorney's office. After being transferred twice, I finally got someone who could pull up the file. Yes, Miss Morrison, the paralegal confirmed. Your grandmother was very specific that this inheritance was for you alone. She even included a letter explaining that she wanted you to have the financial freedom to pursue your own dreams. A letter? There had been a letter, and I had never seen it. Is there any way I could get a copy of that letter? I asked. 20 minutes later, it arrived in my email. I opened it with shaking hands. My dearest Ashley, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, but I hope the money I'm leaving you will give you the freedom to live your own life. I've watched you sacrifice so much for this family, and while your kindness is beautiful, you deserve to chase your own dreams too. Use this money to go to college, to travel, to start fresh somewhere if you need to. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for choosing yourself for once. You've earned the right to be selfish. Love always, Grandma Rose. I cried then. Cried for the 22-year-old girl who had been told there was no money for college. Cried for all the years I had struggled financially while my family lived off money that should have been mine. Cried for Grandma Rose, who had tried to give me a way out, and for the fact that it had been stolen from me. But underneath the tears, something else was building. Something harder and colder than sadness. Anger. I called the attorney's office back. What are my options here? I asked. Well, the paralegal said carefully, if the inheritance was distributed to someone other than the intended beneficiary without proper legal authorization, that could constitute theft. You might want to consult with a lawyer about your options. I hung up and looked around Dad's office again.
10 years of my life.
10 years of being told we couldn't afford things, that money was tight, that I needed to be understanding about not getting help with college or rent or anything else. 10 years of watching my brothers get everything handed to them while I got nothing but more responsibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda, sent from Hawaii. Having the most amazing time. The sunset last night was incredible. Wish you were here. But so glad you're taking care of the kids. The message included a photo of all of them at some fancy restaurant, raising tropical drinks and grinning at the camera. They looked so happy, so carefree, so completely unaware that their world was about to come crashing down. I screenshot the message, then opened my laptop. If my family thought they could steal from me for 10 years and then rub their Hawaiian vacation in my face, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. I had spent 32 years being the good daughter, the helpful sister, the reliable one. But good daughters don't get $247,000 stolen from them. Helpful sisters don't get excluded from family vacations. Reliable people don't get treated like unpaid servants. It was time to stop being so good. I called Dad's hotel in Maui at 2 a.m. my time, which made it 9 p.m. there. I had spent hours preparing for this conversation, printing out documents, making lists, rehearsing what I was going to say. But when he actually answered, all my preparation went out the window. Ashley, what's wrong? Is everything okay with the kids? Of course. His first thought wasn't concern for me. It was making sure his free babysitting service was still functioning properly. The kids are fine, Dad. But we need to talk. Can it wait until we get back? We're at a luau right now, and no, it can't wait. My voice was steadier than I expected. I found Grandma Rose's will. I found the estate documents. I know about my inheritance. The silence on the other end of a line stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Dad, are you there? Ashley?
His voice was different now.
Smaller. I can explain. Explain what? How you stole $250,000 from me. How you used my money to buy Stephen a house and pay for Mike's divorce while I worked 2 jobs just to afford my rent. It wasn't like that. The money was in the family account and we had expenses. It wasn't family money. I was surprised by how loud my voice got. It was my money. Specifically mine. Grandma Rose left me a letter explaining that it was meant to give me freedom, and you took that from me. I heard voices in the background, people laughing and music playing. My family was at a party in paradise, funded by money they had stolen from me. You need to calm down, Ashley. You're being dramatic. Those words hit me like a slap. Dramatic. How many times had I heard that over the years? Every time I complained about being left out, every time I asked for help, every time I dared to suggest that maybe I deserved something too. Dramatic. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, you stole my inheritance and used it to fund everyone else's life while I sacrificed my 20s and 30s taking care of all of you. And now you're in Hawaii, a trip I'm not invited to, telling me I'm being dramatic for being upset about it. We always intended to pay you back eventually. It was like a loan. A loan? Did you ask me before you took it? Did you explain where the money was coming from when you paid for Stephen's house? Did you tell me that Mike's divorce lawyer was being paid with money that belonged to me? More silence. Ashley, you have to understand, we had needs, and you were young, you didn't know how to handle that kind of money. I was 22, not 12. And I asked you to help me with college tuition. Do you remember what you told me? I could hear him breathing, but he didn't answer. You told me that money doesn't grow on trees. You told me I needed to learn responsibility and work for what I wanted. You told me that taking out student loans would build character. We thought it was for the best. No, Dad. You thought it was convenient. It was convenient to have me stay home and take care of everyone. It was convenient to use my money for everyone else while keeping me poor and dependent. I heard someone call his name in the background, Stephen's voice, asking if everything was okay. I have to go, Dad said. We'll talk about this when I get back. Actually, we won't, I said. I've already contacted a lawyer. I'm going to recover what's mine with interest and then I'm done. Don't be ridiculous, Ashley. You can't sue your own family. The casual dismissal in his voice, the assumption that I would never actually stand up for myself, made something snap inside me. Watch me. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started buzzing with incoming calls. Dad, then Stephen, then Mike. I let them all go to voicemail. Then the text started. Stephen, Dad told us what happened. You're overreacting. Call me. Mike, this is crazy, Ashley. We're family. Family doesn't sue each other. Linda, I can't believe you're trying to ruin our vacation over money. The last one made me laugh out loud. Linda was concerned about their vacation being ruined, not about the fact that they had been living off stolen money for a decade. Not about how devastating this betrayal was for me, just about whether it might interfere with their fun. I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet of my apartment. For the first time in weeks, I felt clear. The fog of confusion and hurt that had been clouding my thoughts since the Hawaii announcement was gone. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being stolen from, used, and taken for granted by people who were supposed to love me. And they were so confident in their control over me that they couldn't even conceive of me fighting back. Tomorrow, I would call a lawyer. I would start the process of recovering my inheritance. And I would start building the life I should have had 10 years ago. But tonight, I was going to do something I hadn't done in years. I was going to order takeout from that expensive Italian place downtown, open a bottle of wine, and plan my own trip to Hawaii. Because unlike my family, I was going to pay for it with my own money. The money I was about to get back. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. Margaret Chen, no relation to my boss, thankfully, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in estate fraud. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is pretty straightforward," she said when I finished. "Your father acted as executor of the estate, but he had no legal right to redirect your inheritance to other beneficiaries. That's textbook conversion of assets. What are my options? We can demand full restitution, the original amount plus 10 years of compound interest. We can also pursue legal fees and damages for the financial hardship this caused you." She leaned back in her chair. "Given the paper trail you've provided, they'll likely settle rather than go to court." While Margaret filed the initial paperwork, I kept taking care of my nieces and nephews like nothing had happened. The kids had no idea their parents were about to face the consequences of a decade-old theft. Emma chatted about her art class, the twins argued about video games, and I made them dinner and helped with homework just like always. But everything felt different now. I wasn't the trapped family caretaker anymore. I was someone with options, someone with power, someone who was taking control of her own life. 3 days before my family was due back from Hawaii, Margaret called. "We received a response from your father's attorney," she said. "They want to settle." My heart jumped. "For how much?" "Full restitution plus interest comes to approximately $340,000. They're offering $300,000 to avoid court proceedings." I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. $300,000. More money than I had ever imagined having. "I'll take it," I said. "There's one more thing," Margaret added. "During our investigation, we discovered that your father's house, the one you've been helping maintain, is actually titled in your name for tax purposes. He put it in your name years ago to avoid estate taxes, but forgot to transfer it back." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means you legally own his house. You could sell it tomorrow if you wanted to." After I hung up, I sat in my tiny apartment and looked around at my secondhand furniture, my stack of overdue bills, my life that had been kept small by people who claimed to love me. Then I picked up my laptop and started making lists. First, I researched apartments in the city where I had always wanted to live, Portland, where Jennifer worked as a nurse. I could afford a nice place there now. I could even go back to school if I wanted. Then I looked up the real estate values in my dad's neighborhood. The house was worth about $280,000. Combined with my settlement, I would have more than enough to start completely over. I called a real estate agent and scheduled a listing appointment for the day after my family returned from Hawaii. The night before they came back, I packed my things. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, photos, my grandmother's jewelry that somehow hadn't been sold off yet. I left everything else behind. The furniture could stay with the apartment. I wouldn't need any of it in my new life. I had arranged for a professional babysitter to meet the kids at school the next day. Someone who was actually being paid for their services. I left a note explaining that there had been a family emergency and I had to leave town immediately, but that the children were in good hands. It wasn't entirely a lie. There was a family emergency. It was just that the emergency was me finally learning to value myself. I was loading the last box into my car when my phone rang. Dad, calling from the airport. "We just landed," he said. "How are the kids?" "They're fine. They're with a babysitter." "A babysitter?" Ashley, we're almost home. You didn't need to. Actually, Dad, I won't be there when you get home. I had to leave town unexpectedly. There was a pause. What do you mean, leave town? I mean, I don't live here anymore. I've moved away. Ashley, what's going on? We need to talk about this lawsuit thing. My lawyer says we can work something out. We already worked it out. I accepted your settlement offer this morning. The money should be in my account by Wednesday. Silence. Also, I continued, my voice calm and steady. I'll be listing the house for sale next week. Since it's legally mine, I figured I should probably do something with it. You can't sell the house. I live there. You'll need to find somewhere else to live then. The realtor thinks it should sell pretty quickly in this market. I could hear Stephen and Mike in the background, asking what was happening. Dad was trying to explain in whispered, panicked sentences. Ashley, please. Let's talk about this like adults. Your family. That word again.
Family.
The word they used when they needed something from me, but never when it came time to include me in anything good. Dad, I said, for the past 10 years, you've treated me like an employee. You stole my inheritance, excluded me from family events, and expected me to provide free labor whenever you needed it. But employees can quit, and families don't steal from each other. Where are you going to go? I smiled, looking out at the sunset through my windshield. Somewhere warm. 2 years later, I was sitting on my balcony in Portland, watching the sunrise over the mountains while I drank my morning coffee. My apartment was small but bright, with huge windows and hardwood floors and a kitchen that was mine alone. No one else's dishes in the sink, no one else's messes to clean up. I had used part of the settlement money to finish my education degree. At 34, I was finally a teacher, 3rd grade at Roosevelt Elementary, where my students called me Miss Ashley and drew me pictures of rainbows and dinosaurs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The real estate agent had been right about Dad's house. It sold in 3 weeks to a young couple with a baby. I used that money to buy a small duplex that I rented out for extra income. I was financially stable for the first time in my adult life. My phone rang, interrupting my peaceful morning. The caller ID showed a number I had blocked and unblocked several times over the past 2 years. Mom's old landline, which Dad still used. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, Dad. Ashley. His voice sounded older, more fragile than I remembered. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't. What do you need? There was a long pause. I'm sick, sweetheart. The doctors found something in my lungs. They want to start treatment, but... He trailed off, and I knew what he wasn't saying. He needed help. He needed someone to drive him to appointments, to manage his medications, to take care of him. 2 years ago, I would have been on the next plane home. I would have dropped everything to rush back and fix the problem, just like I always had. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad. That must be scary. Stephen and Mike, they're so busy with their own families. And with their money troubles since the divorce settlements. Another pause. I was hoping maybe you could come home for a while, just until I get back on my feet. Money troubles. Of course. After I left, there was no one to provide free childcare for Mike's kids during his messy second divorce. No one to take care of Dad so Stephen and Sarah could take their weekend trips. They had to start paying for services they had been getting from me for free. I can't do that, Dad. Ashley, please. I know we had our problems, but I'm your father. And I'm scared. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar tug of guilt and obligation. But underneath it was something stronger now. Self-respect. I understand you're scared. Being sick is terrifying. But you have 2 other children who live in the same city as you. You have money from selling assets that belong to me. You have options. It's not the same. You were always the one who took care of things. That was my choice then. This is my choice now. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. I know I wasn't fair to you. I know we made mistakes. Dad, you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to steal my inheritance. You chose to exclude me from family events. You chose to treat me like hired help instead of a daughter. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ashley. Can't we start over? I looked out at the mountains, at the city I had chosen, at the life I had built for myself. A life where I mattered, where my time was valuable, where I was nobody's last resort.
I forgive you, Dad.
I really do, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'm going back to the way things were. What am I supposed to do? The same thing I did when you wouldn't help me with college. The same thing I did when I couldn't afford my own place because I was supporting everyone else. The same thing I did when I was excluded from family trips and family decisions. I paused. Figure it out. There was a long silence. I understand, he said finally. I don't like it, but I understand. After I hung up, I sat on my balcony for a while longer, thinking about the conversation. I felt sad for him, genuinely sad, but I didn't feel guilty. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor David, the guy who lived in the other half of my duplex. Coffee later? I'm making those blueberry muffins you liked. I smiled and texted back. Sounds perfect. David was a middle school teacher, divorced with a teenage daughter who stayed with him every other weekend. He was kind and funny, and he treated me like someone whose opinion mattered. We had been taking things slow, but I was starting to think there might be something real there. Another text, this time from my friend Jennifer. Wine night Thursday? I have major dating drama to debrief. Jennifer and I had reconnected when I moved to Portland. She was exactly as warm and funny as she had been in high school, and she had been the first real friend I'd made in years. She had helped me find my apartment, introduced me to other teachers, included me in her friend group without question. I had a life now, a real life, with people who valued me and work that fulfilled me and choices that were mine alone. My family was learning to live without their unpaid caretaker. Mike had hired an actual nanny for his kids. Stephen had started taking Dad to doctor appointments himself. They were figuring it out just like I had always figured things out. As for me, I was finally living the life Grandma Rose had wanted me to have. I was free.